So to start, everyone's going to get a slight preview of what I'll actually be presenting at the community call tomorrow, because I'm bringing the same topic up, but with a slightly different spin. But what I'm really looking at is how we manage folders. So this is part of the navigation project, and it's a little bit of what Lukasz refers to as a satellite project, where it's not about sort of the primary navigation, but it is definitely an area where the navigation is a little bit problematic. So one of the things that I want to address is that currently, from the sort of top level of, you know, when you go to manage and then you see your sort of list of folders and or dashboards, you know, from that top level, you can delete a folder, but you can't take any other action on it. So you can't rename it, you can't adjust the permissions. In order to do that, you actually have to navigate into the folder where you get, you know, this sort of tabbed view. And this can actually be a little bit confusing because two of the tabs hold content, dashboards and panels, but two of the tabs actually allow you to take actions. And so from sort of like a mental model point of view, it's not ideal that we're kind of changing up what tabs are for. Is it for doing things? Is it for seeing things? And this will actually only become more problematic as we add more types of user generated content, things like library variables or any other kind of like reusable chunks of content, basically is the word I keep using to store things. So the, you know, really what I'm trying to do here is sort of streamline the navigation and reduce clicks to take these actions. Make sure that these types of content are treated consistently so that it's really clear what you can do to each thing, and you can build a mental model rather than kind of just like memorizing where stuff goes, and then making room for, you know, adding these new types of things. So before I go into the design, that's the problem set. Want to just pause and see if anyone has questions about sort of the intent here or the scope that I'm looking at. Okay, and then also just a friendly reminder that in UX feedback session, we do ask everybody to help out on taking notes, please, because when you're presenting, it's very difficult to do so. And then that way we don't just have one person in charge of taking notes. So the notes are linked to the meeting request. So if you all want to chip in on that, that would be very helpful. So what I'm looking at in terms of folder management. So first of all, looking at what I'm just sort of calling general interactions. And these designs are very early. This is not like a fully fleshed out prototype. But to start, you know, this is sort of your start view. And we're going to talk about this filter area a little bit later. But one of the things I did was I collapsed down the new dashboard and new and import buttons, because really both of them are creating a new dashboard in the space. And so for now, I'm going with sort of terminology of like create and import, which gives us just sort of like a little bit more room, a little more space around here. And again, we'll get to filters later, but right now what we're showing here is that I have these collapsed folders and a listing of what is in each folder from a type and account. I could go either way on whether we just do account or also include the type. I find the type helpful, but you know, I understand there might be some sort of technical questions around that. When we open the folder, we then have all of our content that is associated with that folder listed in one place. So remember, today you have to navigate to different tabs, see different pieces of content. And so here I've put it all together in one place. We have a type column in this table that lets you know what you're looking at. We have our tags if they're being used. And then I also kind of like this idea of putting an info column in here where for dashboards, we would list out the dashboard description, but for library elements, we would list out sort of the usage of where things are being used, just so that users might have a better kind of context for what's going on with that thing. Much like today, we're going to go ahead and just have, you know, the checkbox pop up the two buttons that you can either move this or delete this. And that's sort of like the end of that interaction. So I'm going to pause there for feedback before we move on to looking at filters and folder actions.
One minor feedback, Amy, regarding the color coding of those 4 items, 1 library panel, 2 library variables, blah, 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 on the folder kind of row.
Mm-hmm.
I guess this is not fleshed out, but the color for library panels is kind of is bringing me shivers. I think I don't think it should be red. I guess it's red, right?
Mm-hmm.
It kind of indicates to me that something's wrong with something, whatever that is. But other than that, I really like the type column. I'm not sure if we need to be that verbose. Maybe that could be kind of addressed with some icons, something like that. Depends on like how we wanna, whether this table is gonna be like sortable or anything. Okay. But other than that, this looks good.
Cool, thank you.
Okay. One thing that I'm thinking is at the top there is a lot of actions happening. So you have 3 different rows with buttons, and I'm thinking like, where will the user attention go? Because you have, so one action, the new dashboard, it's primary button, and then you have the delete, which kind of takes a lot of attention being read by default, and then the filtering. So I'm just curious if we could maybe think of, yeah, information architecture in that case and how we group things together. But I do like, yeah, the expandable folder view that we have, and the option like having the checks in there looks quite good.
Okay, thanks. One thing I thought of and played with quite a bit was, instead of using today's pattern of the selection popping up these buttons. So like before you make a selection, it's going to work for me. Yeah, before you make a selection, you sort of have these view options. I had sort of played with, instead of in the space having info, having icon actions, but it got very crazy with every single row because I'm using these icons, which we'll look at next. I'm using these icons for the folder actions, and to have the sort of content element actions also be denoted by icons, like there were just like icons everywhere. And I was thinking about, from like a keyboard navigation point of view, it was turning into sort of a nightmare where every single row that you would want to navigate, you would have to get through all of those icons before you could get to the next row. So that was why I did come back here, but I will look at a way of maybe kind of like defining a little bit more of a hierarchy here. So I'm going to keep moving. If anyone has other feedback about sort of the general layout of the sort of like collapsible and the buttons and things like that, please drop it into the notes, or we'll catch it.
One question in terms of like, when we are showing all these different entity types in one, so a folder can contain library panels, variables, dashboards, alerts. Right. It becomes a bit problematic kind of from an information architecture point of view. Where would this page live? This page doesn't live with dashboards, alerts, anywhere, because it will show, it's like the top of the folder viewer.
Yeah.
So yeah, just sort of, what does the alert list show, and what does, maybe if we add data sources, so you can store data sources in folders as well. Yeah, just an interesting kind of conundrum.
Yeah. So for the time being, because alerts are managed in like a completely different place, what I had envisioned, and I'm actually glad you asked that because I forgot to make this point, was that the alerts, and again, this is like a really rough prototype, so nothing really works, but the alerts would actually be a link that would open a new tab and take you to unified alerting. So we're not showing them today in any way in the current folder view, which I think is a little bit misleading, because you can delete a folder that contains alerts. And while we warn you that you might be deleting alerts, you don't know what alerts are there, and you don't know what you have done. And we also currently do not provide an easy way to go see that. Like you actually have to like leave that view, go to alerts, and then go sort of like see like what folder is that in. So I had been thinking that these blue ones would actually be a link. They would get sort of the link treatment on hover, excuse me, and we would pop open that new tab. But definitely did not look at data sources and folders. I'll take a look at that as well.
We don't store them in folders right now. But I mean, if folders become this ubiquitous thing we can organize user content in, yeah, it becomes like strange. Right now it is strange already, where we call them dashboard folders, but we store more than dashboards in them.
Right. Right. And that's something that I definitely want to align with. Lukasz has been looking at sort of as part of this navigation effort, what we are labeling things, where it does go in terms of like the dashboard, like the manage dashboard area. So definitely more to come on that, because I don't know if you all noticed, but like my subtitle here is like, right now it says manage dashboards and folders, but it's also panels and coming up variables, and there's probably gonna be other stuff too. So we kind of need to fix this situation too. So that's definitely on the to-do list as well. Okay, so that's sort of general layout. Let's take a look at, as I mentioned, I wanted to talk about sort of the folder actions. So I have two options here. One is sort of modal based and one is sort of more of an accordion based. And I'm going to show them both and then we can talk and then we'll talk about my third topic. So, now that we're in this expanded view, we want to do something to the folder. We want to be able to delete it, rename it, or set the permissions on it. And again, this is something that today you do by navigating to different tabs. So this is where I have these action icons in here. And so the first sort of thought that I had was like, let's use modals for this, right? Like we've already got a lot going on here. So if we want to set permissions, we click the lock and then we have this sort of like very hacked together modal that I put together. Please ignore all of the shadows and things because it's just a screenshot dropped in there. But we have the ability to set permissions. And when you're done with that, you leave, that's fine. If you want to rename it, same thing, here's another modal. And then if you want to delete, this is basically the same as today, only the one thing I really wanted to do was also kind of list out, today we say, do you want to delete this folder? And it says like including all dashboards, library panels, and alerts. But that doesn't give me a lot of context. So I'd like to kind of provide that list again. So that's the modal option for doing this. And I'm going to show the next one and tell you all what my opinion is, but I'd like to hear your opinions as well. So in this one, for delete, I still want a modal. And the reason I still want a modal is that deleting a folder is an incredibly destructive action. So I want people to stop and think before they do anything. But for the other actions, they're not really super destructive. And I think it could be really helpful to have the context of what's happening. So Torvald, I stole your idea of having this sort of like highlight icon and expand area that you showed last week. And so what I'm doing here is expanding this pane down here. And one of the reasons I really like this is that it gives users the ability to see which items will be affected by what you do up here. And I think that could be really helpful, particularly in situations where you have extremely crowded folders or folders with lots of things on there, many, many dashboards. And then for edit, we have the same kind of thing. So personally, I kind of lean towards this option, but definitely interested in people's feedback if they think that, are we getting kind of too crazy with the scroll? If the folder really does have like 100 dashboards in it, is it just like way too much? So looking for feedback on that as well.
I have a feeling that accordion might be tricky because there might be a lot of permissions set per folder, and there might be a lot of contents inside the folder, especially for the huge companies and big Grafana instances.
What would be, can you help me explain what might be tricky about it? Is it because, are you thinking about like a performance delay because it might be too crowded and it might have to go read all of its permissions, or?
That we might end with either two scroll boxes that you need to scroll, or two very long boxes that actually lose this advantage of
Right.
seeing the information at once.
Right. Okay. For the permissions in particular. Okay.
Yeah, but because like a editing name, if we want to do it in place, then that can be just like a clicking on the name of the folder itself as well, or having an icon next to that and just changing the name as we do with the names of the series in Query Editor.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that?
One minor comment, again, nit from my side. I think the padlock icon doesn't indicate the permissions here. For me, it indicates that this folder is just locked or something like that. I would probably expect some different icon for permissions.
I need to look at that because I feel like I picked it up from somewhere else where we're using that icon for permissions. So I'll look at that. I'm trying to, I don't remember now where I saw that. I might not have, I might have just made that up. So
I actually think we use that. I think it's used for the permissions currently.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I don't have a super strong preference on the icons on the modal versus the I mean, yeah, for some of the actions, yeah, like in context, modal is like a last resort most of the time, I feel like, or it's better to have like things changing in context instead of being this window that overlays content. I feel like modal is usually like a last resort, but yeah, I do get Luke's point that if you have about 50 permission rows, you have to scroll out to kind of get the context of which folder you're actually editing permissions for. If that those permissions are sort of numerous. The biggest thing that in terms of changing this, so not having a folder page you navigate to, and just having it like in line here is losing the ability to like navigate to the folder, or like how which you can do today from like search, for example, and sort of get a scoped view of this folder and what you can, the actions and or content it can contain.
Okay, I will take a look at that, like how we might get here from search. That's something that I haven't looked into, so I'll take a look at that as well. It might be that maybe we can land here, but it's expanded. I'll take a look at what that might look like, because that's something I hadn't considered. Okay. Any other feedback on this particular modal accordion actions interaction going on? Oh, it looks like Vaughn has sense. Sorry, go ahead. How do you go?
Would it make sense to be able to change the folder name inline, like in any other, like Microsoft Explorer? Or...
Yeah, I mean, I looked at that. That's not a common pattern for us. So I was kind of not wanting to go there, because like with dashboards, it pulls up a search. Today with folders, it actually sends you to the folder.
We do have one pattern for it. If you go to the query editors and the query name, so by default it's ABC. There we actually have, like, if you hover over that, it turns it to a pen, and like we have some interaction to really show that you can edit it. But that's the only place. You're right that it's not a common pattern that we use in list views that I know.
I mean, I like it as a pattern personally. I think it's fast, and I think Luke suggested that also. So yeah, I'll take a look at that and see if it muddies things at all. Because if that's the case, then all I have left is permissions and delete, and maybe there's a better solution here. So, Vaughn had his hand up, but did he go? Oh, there you are. Okay, I lost you on the screen.
Hi, everybody. I'm the new guy, so just ignore me if I ask silly questions. With regards to the delete, is it possible to show, so I can't quite remember what it looks like when you click on that. I don't know if you're able to just click the delete button quickly, please. Thanks. Is it possible to give a little more detail in this summary? Like it says 6 items, 1 library panel, 2 library variables. Could we list what the names of those things are, or is there a technical limitation as to, like behind doing that?
I would ask another question, Vaughn. I think it is a good question. There are many customers that use hundreds of library, like hundreds of panels, you know, or dashboards or alerts. There could be many, many. And so at what point, at what abstraction level, or what abstraction level is helpful to the customer here would be my return question. I'm not sure the names would be helpful.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe let me share the thinking behind the question. I was wondering if making it so easy to delete something that, and I don't know if there's a way to roll back and undelete it, like undo it, but making it so easy to delete something without really seeing exactly what it is that you're deleting. I wonder if that is making it easy for people to make mistakes. Again, I'm still getting used to who the users are and how they work and think, and you know how what the system patterns are like. But I'm just imagining over here, it's obviously easy to see there's like 1 thing or 2 things, but as you're saying, in a case where there's like hundreds, you know, what would be the solution to even see if there's something there that you would need to see and not delete? But yeah, I just thought I would pose the question and see what came back.
Yeah, I mean, so a system that I worked on in the past where we had very destructive delete actions, we actually included a checkbox that would not enable the delete button until it was selected. And the checkbox label said, I understand this action cannot be undone. And so it made the user sort of like, whoa, stop, this is not undoable. Or like, you know, like whatever sort of like the really bad thing would be, we'd list that and make them select that checkbox and then say that they would delete. So it's actually like a 2-step interaction. That might be something worth considering here as well, especially for these extremely large folders with lots and lots of content. So, so we are, sorry, go ahead.
You and I had talked about, Amy, when we looked at this together last week, and this is perhaps neither here nor there, but I'll share it with the team, is that the as code working group is developing a method to archive or backup a lot of these objects in Grafana into Git, for example. And so there's a possible future where there is exactly a checkbox and its secondary function or something to that effect is that all these objects are archived in VCS before they're removed from Grafana as a sort of security blanket.
Okay. So I know that there are more comments and I see your hands raised, and I'm glad everyone's chiming in, but I do have one more thing I need to show before my 30 minutes is up. So if you can please drop it into the notes or just follow up with me on Slack, I would love to continue the conversation that way. So the last thing I want to show is sort of my options for filtering. So again, I have kind of like 2 options. I have one that I definitely prefer over the other. So I had said earlier, like just ignore this whole section right now, but now we're going to stop ignoring it. So in this situation, I have 2 filters that are set and I'm sort of like listing them here. And then I have a clear button. So just pretend like this content is being filtered. And again, like I'm trying to keep this with not like 1,000 elements up here, because of the fact that from a keyboard navigation point of view, it gets really ugly if you have to even get to your folders, get through, you know, like 10 years worth of tabbing or, you know, arrow buttons. So here we're going to show the filter options. And again, we have this sort of accordion option where, you know, I'm looking at this as right now you can really only filter on 3 things. What type it is it a panel? Is it a dashboard? We're not showing alerts, but is it a variable? Whether or not it's starred is another filter. And then lastly, by tags. So in the example that I have shown here, we are showing all dashboards that are not starred. And users can either, you know, clear them or they can add another row. And so you can kind of build this more complex filter as you go. And then you can remove rows once they've been added. So that's option 1 is accordion. Option 2. is using a right-hand drawer. So now we're all the way over here. And here I'm saying how many filters are set. So we're showing 2. And when we open the drawer, we just get, again, right now it's pretty simple, but again, as our types of content grow and as we are using our folder structure more, I think we'll probably find more and more things we want to filter on. And so this works a lot more like a typical kind of like shopping experience filter, where it's just these check boxes and you can clear them. And then when you're done, you can close the drawer, which I can't do right now because it's buried under my hover. But so quickly, any thoughts on those 2 options?
Amy, a question on your first option.
Yes.
Like the one that opens above in line. How many filters are you expecting to have in total? I mean, why? And pretty much the question is, why not show them all at once so the user doesn't have to click over and over to create new filters?
Yeah, I mean, right now at most we could have 3 rows here. I just wanted to show what it would look like with 2. But I could show them all. One of the problems I was having, I would go with a more horizontal layout than I'm showing in the drawer right now. And I just personally wasn't loving how it was looking laid out, but I can take another look if we think we need to.
I mean, I like this option that if it had like less clicks, because I've seen this pattern more often where the filters kind of open above whatever you are filtering. And being able to see them all at once and not having to click to see like what's adding new rows can work fast, even if they're more vertical. But in a way, we can reapply this in other places as well. I think in Grafana.
Okay, Luke, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so like I'm just wondering like if having filters hidden under the button doesn't actually like limit this discoverability of those filters, and in the sake of not having like a ton of them on top, we should more focus on picking the filters that are actually relevant for people, but keeping them visible all the time instead of hiding them behind the button.
Yeah, I mean, so today we show them all of the time. So actually there are only 2 filters today, because you cannot filter by type, because the way that you see by type is that you navigate to different tabs. And so, from my perspective, adding 1 more probably isn't that bad. But then when we add another type of content, we're going to have another one, so it just sort of feels like it's inevitable that our filter options and our filter sort of robustness is going to grow. And I was trying to solve a bit for that. And also be wary of, I mean, I guess from like a navigation point of view, it's really only adding like 1 more. I'll look at that. Let me take another look at that. I think I need to think about that a little bit, but that's good feedback. Thank you. So I am basically up against my time. So just so that everyone is aware of sort of next steps on this. So again, please drop any comments that you might have that we didn't get to today in the notes, or hit me up on Slack. I'm going to be giving an overview of this. We went pretty in depth today, but I'm going to give an overview during the community call tomorrow, where I will be asking people to take time to meet with me to do some more sort of in-depth, like, how do you use folders today? Do you filter? Do you search? How, what are you, what are your plans for how you work this? So I'm hoping to get a lot more information based on the community call tomorrow. So I will let everyone know how that goes. And that is it for me today. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, okay, I guess I'm next. I will be super fast because I know we have next session coming up. So the topic I have for you today is a bit of a change to the information architecture of the dashboarding app and to the icons on the navbar, basically, to make space and actually enable new navigation to work accordingly to the mental models of people and to reflect actually the information architecture, to the navigation to reflect the information architecture of different apps. And historically, the problem we are facing is related to the fact that previously Grafana started as a visualization and dashboarding tool. So it makes sense that features related to dashboards were also sprinkled across navigation. But because we are growing and there are more features and more apps and more things on the navigation, it starts to be confusing. And we are also discussing introducing the new homepage template, which also affects how the homepage will look like. And right now the homepage, as you probably know, is nothing more than a special type of the dashboard. So what I definitely want you to think about when like watching what I will be showing is to spot any risks that you see with the changes that I will talk about, and to note down or raise any things that we missed or haven't considered with that. So what, and the changes are not impacting the interface. They're mainly impact what elements we show and where. So there are no new components, no new UI elements there, at least yet. So there are like a few changes proposed. So first one is the home dashboard and the name of the home dashboard, because right now it is called like a home under the general tab. So the first proposition is to basically call the homepage home and to express that with an icon as well, especially that the home dashboard, although it is shown as belonging to general folder, actually is not present in the general folder when you navigate to general folder basically. So it is not exposed there. So it doesn't make sense to show it here. So that's the first thing. So sounds really simple, but it's definitely tricky because people are used to all those things that we are discussing here. The second thing is renaming the dashboard dashboarding app homepage, which is right now called Manage, as you already know also from the presentation of Amy. So the suggestion is to change it to Browse, because most users who are not editors or admins either way use that list in a browsing mode because they cannot manage folders or dashboards. So changing that to Browse will first of all reflect more what most of the people are doing, because you cannot manage when you're a viewer and you don't have permissions to manage folders, and the tab is still called Manage. So so it makes no sense for people. And the second thing related to that is then when you hover over dashboard icon, that page will be called Browse and not Manage. And this makes more sense for people because when they hover over dashboard icon, they want to understand how to see the list of dashboards and how to browse them. And today we don't have any like a keyword that expresses that intention, because here we have Manage. So changing that to Browse is a second thing. The third thing that is definitely more maybe more risky, but would align with the information architecture that we actually have, is to remove the home element from the dashboards menu. So right now before Browse we have a home, and the home actually redirects you to the home page, but that is not a home page of the dashboarding app. That's the home page of the whole Grafana. So people often, when they see the home under the dashboard icon, they think that when they click home, they will be moved to the home of the dashboard app, which in their heads is actually the browse page. And the home is already the icon, the Grafana icon here. That said, that can be challenging, or because people might be used to that. So we definitely need to learn more about that and do some usability studies with people on that terms. And if people will be missing the home icon, then the suggestion would be to just put a home icon on the navbar, basically, to give people like two options on the navbar to go to the home page. And the last thing, probably the most tricky, related to the restructuring of the dashboard apps, is actually related to removing the add button from the navbar. Because right now the add button, what it does, it only allows you to add a new folder, add a new dashboard, or basically import dashboard. So those are actions related and connected to the dashboards, and connected also to the management of the dashboards, and they are like available here, or as with the Amy's concept, they will still be available when you enter the dashboard app. So that's the one direction, to remove the add button from the navbar completely. The second option, if we see that people rely on that plus button strongly, is to basically expand the feature, the capabilities of the plus button, and allow to add more resource from that button. So, for example, to add new data source, or to add plugin, or to add a new report if someone is a enterprise customer. Because this will be also more aligned with the mental model of people that in the navbar, then the plus represents adding resources to the Grafana as a whole, and not only to adding things related to the dashboard themselves. So those are all the changes. They are tricky, and we definitely need to learn more, especially about what happens when there is no home link apart from the Grafana logo, and how people are attached to the plus icon on the navbar. And that's it. Happy to hear your thoughts around that, and the things that we missed, or the risks that we have with the changes.
So just one quick comment from me, that I did a really sort of like quick internal observe people navigating Grafana when I first joined. And one of the things that I found pretty interesting was that almost nobody used the Grafana logo as a way to return home. People tended to either use the back button or just sort of like manage their way back to where they were going, but very few people seemed to understand that that functionality was there. So from that perspective, I like the idea of having a separate, very explicit link that says to go home.
The question is, did you observe that they are using the home under the dashboard app, the dashboard icon?
I have to go back and look to see what they did instead, but I remember specifically writing down that nobody knew to go click there. So let me get back to you on that one.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool, thank you. Hugo?
Yes, short question. Changing the home title nav thing to house home, will the users still be able to search?
By clicking on home. Yeah, so that is a very interesting thing. To be honest, I don't even remember if like clicking right now on home on the home page actually opens the search. I don't remember that. I think I never clicked on a home on the home page. Yeah, because if it does, then we can keep that basically to home to launch the search. We know that this like a clicking on the also on the dashboard titles. I think like at some point we removed that, and people were very confused with that because that's in their muscle memory. So sticking to that pattern that the name here launches search is definitely something that we can keep. Because basically it is just like removing the general and changing the icon in the end. So we don't have to change how that element behaves. It is more about to like reflect what is actually happening.
Okay, thanks.
Patrick?
Yeah, so one thing I think Tork also wrote it down that, for instance, when I click home, I go to a specific dashboard that I have set as home dashboard. So it's basically the dashboard, which is my main dashboard I look at. Secondly, I think the issue that Amy brought up with the Grafana icon not being used as a home button is that for a time it was used as a way to hide and show things. So basically, it didn't function as a home button for quite some time. But since that was a weird behavior, we changed it to be home. Other than that, I really like the idea of an add button that you can add anything on, like data sources and dashboards and so forth. That I think is a really good thing.
Yeah. So some comments with the manage and browse. This just kind of this is the original intent of this view was an admin view basically. So that's why it's called manage, was to sort of for users to move folders around, move dashboards around through folders, access permissions, and kind of manage dashboards. And for browsing, search is like the thing that should, I think, so promote as the thing to discover and navigate between dashboards.
And as a comment on that, I totally get that. But if we ever move, and I think we have a appetite to do so, if we ever expand the search features to be like a unified search, then we can rely less on search to be actually the dashboard list, because it would have to in the first view, like in the untyping state, it should probably show some like a suggestions of what can be searched and how it can be searched, or provide like a recent searches and all that stuff. So we can pretty soon lose the capability of search to be basically the list of the dashboards.
Yeah, but I think search can be expanded to be the kind of quick navigation, searching, show recent apps you've used, and yeah, we can expand search to be really the go-to place to navigating around Grafana.
Yeah, but the dashboard app will be still there, and people click on the dashboard and they don't know how to get the list of the dashboards, especially if they're infrequent users of Grafana. So I totally get that, and I also have like this conflict in my head that it will be named like a browse, but it will be for managing. But I think that's a step on the path, and the first one that we are making, because right now there's also the other situation where the list view is basically called, or the browse view is basically called manage. So I guess we are all at Grafana using Grafanas in administrative mode, let's say. But in many companies, most users are using that in as viewers. So it means that what is obvious for us and what is the default state for us is not a default state for most of the users. So thus, I would say the smaller group of people should deal with a bit of inconsistency in the naming of the tab than the bigger group. But it's not a perfect solution, definitely.
No, I agree. But it's just, I think in general, we should look at search sort of for like being the browse for being because it almost feels like we're doing unified search in almost two ways, by like with the thing that Amy addressed with like mixing all different types in this view. It's sort of a unified search in a way, or we'll basically have to solve some of the unified search problems because this view uses search. Basically, we have two views for search, one with multi-action. Anyway, that's a more technical issue.
Yeah, and that's a different project. So there are a lot of overlaps, but we need to start somewhere.
There's definitely a lot of overlap between this view and search. I mean, they use the same component right now. With the home, the biggest problem is that people will be very accustomed to clicking on the home on the dashboard icon to get to their home dashboard. So I think yes, finding some way to have a home icon could be a good idea. If we want to, especially if we want to maybe separate the question is how can we get to a point where we can have Grafana home is separate from your home dashboard. And that's,
Yeah.
I think, what we would like to do long term. And the question is like, how can we make both those accessible? Grafana home and the user home dashboard.
Yeah, I agree, and definitely that's also like a step toward that. But we don't have a homepage as a standalone thing, feature page yet, so we are dealing with the current situation. But I guess like the overall sentiment from most of you is basically to have a home icon on the navbar as a additional icon there. Which I totally get, and I was like more like adventurous in removing that home altogether and just resorting to the Grafana logo as a way to navigate home.
I think it could. I mean, I think people are very accustomed to getting quickly to their home dashboard, and I think they're so used to clicking the dashboard icon. But if we can just add a new icon for them to click on.